This November, the UK will host COP26, bringing global leaders together to accelerate climate action. To support the event, Formula E are sending me on an electric road trip to Glasgow to immerse myself in stories of electric racing and electric vehicles, the renewable energy revolution, and much more. Welcome to the EV Road Trip. So welcome to the EV Road Trip to COP26. You're joining us here in London. It's very early in the morning. Currently on the clock, it's reading as 225 miles of range. So that obviously means that there will be at least one full charge stop en route. But we are not going direct. We're stopping at some other places and visiting some projects and some cool places on the way. So we're probably doing a little bit more miles than that. So we might need to charge a little bit more. But yeah, I'm excited to get going. There's lots of cool stuff en route on the way to Glasgow, and I like road trips as it is, so this is a win-win for me. Let's do it. One of the discussion points at COP26 is about speeding up the switch to electric vehicles. So with that in mind, we'll be stopping off at a few places that are going to be instrumental in that switch. The first being in Gaydon and the headquarters of Jaguar Land Rover. The plan is to speak with a few experts, starting with creative chief exterior designer Dominic Najafi. I'm hoping he can give us a different perspective about the future of the cars we drive, and how the manufacturing of electric cars creates new possibilities in how they can be designed. So working in design on electric cars, what sort of avenues? I mean, if you look at like the genesis of cars, it's always been around engines being in certain places, so you have to build around that. But with the electric cars, batteries can be configured in different ways, different shapes and sizes. So what did that do when you first start looking at electric cars? Is that kind of creativity overload?
Really, it was very exciting because what that enabled was a completely clean sheet of paper. So we could really go back to first principles and create a car using, taking every opportunity possible from what electrification gave us. So I can demonstrate here a little bit. If we go to, first of all, what this gave us opportunity was to put the battery pack in between the wheels, and that made the wheelbase long, which creates space. Then, removing the engine from here allowed the motors to go onto the axles, and that allowed us to actually create a short overhang on the front, create space. We can then start to challenge the whole silhouette of the car. So the windscreen and the front seats are moved forward, and then this means the bonnet is lower, shorter, and this already creates a very aerodynamic profile. If you imagine the air travelling along here, and because it's not so much of an upright windscreen, you get the transition of air over the car is much smoother. If you imagine a traditional car would probably have a longer front overhang, a taller bonnet, and then again, because where the engine will be positioned, we'd have a upright windscreen as well. It's quite traditional. And this is a lot more, expressive and much more attitude to it.
What do you think the future of electric mobility looks like when it comes to how cars look?
I think proportions will get even more expressive and even more dramatic as battery technology improves and gets smaller and more space efficient. That gives us even more freedom to kind of move the shapes around and really shape the future of these cars. With autonomy as well, it's all about the experience of imagining the interior. We don't have to drive all the time, and then sometimes we're lounging or doing work, or it opens up so many opportunities. So our whole travel experience will change. I think to be a car designer, or just to be in the automotive industry in general, definitely be the most exciting time ever, and it's really great to be part of this. Before we left, I wanted to find out more about Jaguar's involvement in Formula E and motorsport, and what real-world developments have been made to the road cars as a result of the racing. Thankfully, Jack Lambert, Technical Partnerships Manager at Jaguar Racing, was on hand to talk to us. So what I want to know is, since Jaguar made their triumphant return to motorsport a few years ago, we've had Formula E, we've had the I-Pace Trophy. What lessons have been learned from motorsport that have now found themselves going into the design and the performance of the road cars?
So motorsport gives us a massively beneficial test bed really to push technology as hard as it can possibly go. So for example, off the back of e-Trophy and from Formula E, we managed to boost I-Pace's range by 20 kilometres, and that was a software over the air upgrade to our customers.
Love that. You've added range to an on-the-road car, something that a lot of EV drivers or future EV drivers are most concerned about. That's been impacted by motorsport and it's been fixed over the air.
It's a game of efficiency. Everyone has a spec car, so we don't really have too much control over aerodynamics, which is a massive player in other motorsport. What we're targeting constantly is efficiency gains. And efficiency gains for us on the track means performance, so we can push every system harder, but efficiency gains on the road mean range. And it allows that transition of technology from the race to the road in a much more sort of seamless and applicable manner.
Obviously, there are plenty of people out there that need a little bit more encouragement to awaken to the world of electric cars.
Yeah.
What would you say to those people?
So I think we're at the start of a revolution, really, when it comes to the automotive industry and the application of electric powertrains. We're in this real push, acceleration, to try and find new and innovative ways to apply the tech. And I think history tells us that motorsport is a very good way of pushing the limits of that. And that's what we're seeing in Formula E. If you look at from Gen 1 into Gen 2 and now looking at Gen 3 in the specs of car, it's almost exponential in the way the development is happening. And that is going to apply to the road industry as well.
So then that makes me want to ask you, what are the possibilities in the future with electric vehicles? Like, how far can it go?
I think the answer to that is it's limitless, isn't it, really? It's as far as you can push material science, it's as far as you can push physics, really. With battery package, can we make batteries smaller, denser, more powerful? Can we make motors smaller, denser, more powerful? Can we increase the space for occupants? Can we then use that technology to increase performance and range? And we're going to be looking at fast charging. Can you fill up your electric car as quickly as you can now fill up your combustion car? I think we're not far away from that.
I thought I'd be leaving at this point and heading up north for the rest of the trip, but the lovely people at Jaguar have just said that I can take the I-Pace that I'm taking to Glasgow onto the test track, the proving ground, and actually get a real sense of its performance, its acceleration, its handling, its speed. I could not be more excited. Right, here we go onto the long straight. I'm already at 80. Got on the gas. Oh my god, even now it's feeling that 97, 100, 110. Oh, I'm not looking at the speedometer anymore. 120. Oh my god, that is amazing. It's like driving a spaceship. 128. Top speed reached. I don't think I've ever said that in a road car before. It's like every dream I've ever had. The regen as well is so good. The regen is doing all of the braking I need. It's just unbelievable how well that holds. That is so sticky. Love it. 80 mile an hour this corner. Long hairpin. 80 mile an hour. 85. Back on the gas. It's like driving a race car. It's an SUV. Oh my word. That is an unbelievable experience. This thing is so impressive. Now I've got to drive it to Glasgow sensibly. Well, this has been a pretty epic start to this road trip. We've had a great time today. Not quite ready to say the day's over yet. I'm going to do a few more laps. See you in a bit. Welcome to day 2 of the EV road trip. I can't get over yesterday how much fun that was, driving the Jaguar around the test track. It's like driving a spaceship, 128. Today is going to be all about distance and range, because we're probably going to be driving the most amount of miles that we'll cover on any day on this road trip, because we're going from here to the north of England, to Sunderland. We're not going to be just bombing it up there A to B, because what sort of video would that make? We're going to be stopping en route. Few cool places, the first of which is actually very, very close to where we're starting, and that's the headquarters of the Mahindra racing team. And I've heard that they're having a simulator day today, so there might be some drivers about who could potentially give us a little tour of the inner workings of a Formula E team. Mahindra have been racing in the championship since season 1, and fairly recently it moved to an impressive new headquarters, which I'm excited to take a look around. Especially as I have Mahindra racing driver and big-time electric car advocate Alexander Sims as a tour guide. Ever wondered what a Formula E team HQ looks like? Well, you're about to find out.
Here's a nice large workshop facility. Pretty nice to have this massive space actually. I think for a Formula E team it's a pretty decent space. Yeah,
I'm looking around, there's a lot of people looking very busy. So maybe this is a good chance to ask you, in terms of experience in these mechanics, engineers, there must be plenty of racing experience in this.
Yeah, we've got a really good mix actually here in Mahindra. Everyone's been in motorsport in various categories for many, many years. So there's a vast amount of different experience, which comes in really useful in Formula E, because Formula E is like no other championship.
Dare I say it, I don't think there's another driver on the Formula E grid, maybe another grid in motorsport, that is as, let's say, dedicated or as passionate about electric vehicles as you, because you've been driving one for how long now?
Getting on for 10 years almost, yeah.
That's more than most people. What was it that made you make the switch?
I remember filling up at the same petrol station near my mum's house for the third time in a week. And it was just that moment, really. I guess I was just filling up with another 50 litres of diesel. And so this would have been back in like 2008, I think. I just thought, where does this end?
But then at the time, there wasn't exactly like there was a vast amount of full EVs on the road. It was only a few.
It was crazy, really. When I look back, there were like 11 high-powered chargers in the UK that I did 20,000 miles a year, worked out how to use extension cords out of hotel bedrooms and stuff, and it's a big change to what it is now.
Sustainability and Mahindra is not just about racing, is it? It's about racing with as little impact as possible. So how does that take shape with the team?
When I was looking to join the team, the campaign that they'd run during that season, where they'd planted a tree for every fan boost vote that they had, was something that chimed with my interests. It felt quite clearly that the team was interested in sustainability in a genuine way. Day to day, the team's constantly talking about how they can adjust their working practices to incorporate sustainable measures into the race team. They've got their 3-star accreditation for sustainability. As we walk around, we see little things pop up of trying to encourage people to do simple things, turn the lights off, just understand what their habits are impacting in terms of energy consumption.
Great to hear about how Mahindra as a team are as passionate about the reason as they are the racing. Before I leave, there's one stop left on the tour, the simulator. Oh wow.
So yeah,
this is next level stuff. It's an impressive bit of kit. I need to ask a cheeky question.
Yeah.
I don't know when I'll ever be in a position like this. Can I please have a go?
I think it would be rude not to.
Yes.
It would be rude not to, absolutely.
Love it. Oh yeah. This is intense, I love it. There's like a sort of tension thing going on in the belts. It's like a mechanical thing. It's so much lower than I expected, and the halo as well. This is a very unusual view for me. So what track can I do?
Well, I think we're considering doing London.
London.
If that would be all right for you.
Inside, outside. Okay, yeah. Challenging, but I'm up for it. I'm up for it.
I've got to say, your overall, just general racing lines are really spot on.
It's all the karting.
Yeah, man. To be honest, I was impressed that your first laps, you already had a good feeling. That's something that I struggle to teach a relative rookie, is just the feeling of where to be on the track.
I'll take that. Time to get back on the road, but there is somewhere else I want to visit before charging, pun intended, our way up north. The technical headquarters of Formula E and testing venue for their first ever Formula E car, Donington Park. Trust me, it's going to be worth it. Welcome to Donington Park. The reason why I wanted to stop off here on the EV road trip is because this is pretty much the only place in the world where you can see the history of Formula E via the cars in one place at one time, starting with this. Now this was the demo, the test car that basically gave birth to Formula E here at Donington. You can see how basic it is. I mean, the tyres aren't representative to Formula E, they're about twice as wide. The chassis is very simple, but you can see, even looking at the steering wheel, how simplified it is based on what we're used to now with Formula E cars. You've got, we're used to big screens, loads of data, loads of buttons. This is literally like a kit car steering wheel. It was super basic, just what they needed to test the concept essentially of Formula E. And then the battery and powertrain from this demo car went into the first racing car in Formula E, which we have here. What we started out with was a 28 kilowatt hour battery, which wasn't enough to finish the race. So we had those driver swaps, which we had until season 4. Now that's just where the battery technology was at the time. It was already incredibly advanced considering, where motorsport, especially electric motorsport was, but it wasn't quite enough to get a whole race in the one battery. And then we get to Gen 2 where things went up a serious amount. Now, in terms of visual differences, obviously there's quite a lot of differences between Gen 1, Gen 2, a whole new body design change, the halo. The Gen 1 car had a 28 kilowatt hour battery. The Gen 2 car has a 54 kilowatt hour battery, which effectively doubled the capacity, doubled the range, meaning car swaps were a complete thing of the past. But most impressively, it did all of that without actually a massive difference to size or weight to the batteries. I mean, just the level of development and advancement that's come in a relatively short space of time, we're talking around about less than 10 years, is incredibly impressive. And that's relevant on the road too. Think about where the electric car market was 10 years ago to where it is now. I mean, that rate of change is unbelievable. And then thinking about the next generation of Formula E car, Gen 3, Season 9, the sky's the limit. But before we get too stuck looking far ahead, there's one more thing I want to show you while we're on site here. If you're long-term or die-hard Formula E fan, you might want to prepare yourself because this is going to blow your mind. I'm almost certain that this room has never been seen on camera before. It's like a Formula E museum. I mean, just to begin with, Jean-Eric Vergne's Season 4 championship winning car. I know that because the Allez Le Blues on the rear wing, because Jev won the championship on the same day that France won the World Cup. We were in New York, I remember it very well, watching the final in the FIA garage. You've got Sam Bird's car from that same weekend, who going into that weekend was battling for Jev for the championship here. Now these are very unique, spiked Formula E tyres used for one video ever, which was when they took a Formula E car and they drove it on an ice cap. So they had spiked tyres to stop it from slipping. And then at the back, you've got two versions of the Gen 1 car. The first from Season 1 with this kind of fixed wing, and then the front wing that was changed for Season 3 and Season 4. And you can see the two here together to see how they differ. I mean, this room is filled with Formula E history. It is like a museum. Can you imagine if this garage was on Storage Hunters?
So after leaving the unofficial Formula E museum that is Donington Park, the longest journey of the trip so far was calling. But without enough usable energy left in the battery to reach our next location of Sunderland in the northeast, it's time to stop off for a charge and chat about the reality of driving long journeys in an electric car.
I thought this was a good opportunity to talk a little bit about some of the maybe mistruths around charging, because a lot of people talk about the switch to electric like it's an impossible task. Like there's no chargers around, you know, you have to wait hours at charging stations to charge your car up. It's really not the case. Like just using this journey I'm taking now as an example, it's about 160, 170 miles from Donington to Sunderland. This car could do it in one go. Even if it couldn't, on that route there was about 10 different options of rapid chargers without even going a mile off route to charge your car up. So even if you've got a car that has, you know, 100 miles range, 150 miles range, whatever, you've got plenty of options around to charge your car. And when I say rapid chargers, I'm talking about 50 kilowatt DC chargers, which means that you plug it in at something as low as 10% and in half an hour you might have 80%. So to try and quantify that, think about you rock up at a service station, you plug in, you go to the toilet, you get yourself a coffee, maybe you get yourself something to eat if it's lunchtime. By the time you're back, you've probably added 60, 70, in some fast charging cars, maybe even 100 miles of range. Long journeys in electric cars do require a little bit of forward thinking, you know, planning your journey, but you think about the benefits, the positives that come from that. Zero tailpipe emissions. You're driving a clean car that doesn't have any emissions, isn't polluting the world. The cost involved, yeah, I mean, it's no secret that electric cars can be more expensive, but once you've got it, once you're driving it, or even if you lease it, the savings you're making month on month by how much cheaper it is to charge versus how much it costs to fill up a combustion vehicle, it's so much cheaper to operate. The final thing I'll say right now is that this charger I'm using right now costs 30p a kilowatt. This car can take up to 90 kilowatt hours, so a full charge, 0 to 100%, which is more than I'm doing now, would cost around about £27. And that's one of the most expensive ways to charge using these rapid public chargers. If you're charging at home, you're getting it significantly cheaper than that.
So with enough charge to get me to my next stop, it's time to head northeast to Sunderland for a very exclusive look at how electric cars are manufactured. Welcome to day 3 of the EV road trip. Last night we made it to Sunderland, and today we're here at Nissan, the plant where the Nissan Leaf is made, one of the best-selling EVs on the market, actually the first mass-market EV all the way back in 2013. And today we are giving you exclusive access onto the production line to see how it's made and talk to the people that make it. As well as being a successful Formula E team, the manufacturer powering the team are one of the most successful EV makers in the business. And with big plans for the future, I'm interested to know how a global manufacturer like Nissan are planning to level up how they operate. But first, let's make the most of the access and get up close to see how an electric car is made and how smooth the transition to electrification is going. Cue global launch expert and Nissan Leaf maestro Les Greener to show us around the production line. This is like little boy in a sweet shop. This is amazing.
The Leaf here has already got the cockpit module installed. You can see it all laying out. It's put in by the lovely lifter behind you, which is just purely, it's there, it's tucked between Qashqai and Leaf.
Okay.
So one car will be a Qashqai, you'll pick the cockpit module up, the lads will put in the car, and the next car will be the Leaf. So here we're on engine dress, you can see a standard combustion engine. Basically you've got the drive shafts, the actual motor itself, and then the next car will be an electric vehicle, so that's the Leaf powertrain. It's exactly the same process. Every one of these operators down here will either fit something to a combustion engine or they'll fit something to an electric engine.
It's quite interesting to see the two together, purely just size.
The engines itself, very much smaller, very easier to work on. The battery is the part that changes.
Yeah.
So between what you had as a 24 kilowatt to a 40 kilowatt, you can see the battery size increasing.
So in terms of the way the plant works then, with combustion and electric, the electric doesn't really add in too many issues. It sort of rolls straight into the normal process.
It's a normal process of a car.
Wow, okay. Right, well let's keep moving because I'm intrigued.
So the battery's already installed in the car. You can see it underneath the car wall, the undercover's already fitted on.
Yeah.
The axle and the EPT is ready to be installed in the car. You have an operator either side, they'll lift it to a certain height and then that'll feed inside the car.
And that's it, that's the process done?
4 bolts in and that's the process, that's the engine bin.
So how many Leafs can you make a day here?
17 an hour, 17 an hour at the moment. That's our capacity as a plant. But obviously that's more investment all the time. That'll change.
17 Nissan Leafs in an hour? Yeah. Wow. And this plant alone has made a significant contribution to the 500,000 that have been sold?
Oh, yes. If you talk about full length from basically a panel coming in,
yeah,
it takes about, if you add everything together, it'll probably take between about 12 hours from panels getting pressed, cars getting painted, all the way through.
So when the work on the Leaf started here in the production plant, what was the frequency? How many Leafs were there for every combustion vehicle?
Oh, one in 10 was a good day.
And what's it now?
1 in 3.
I mean, that says it all, doesn't it?
It does. It tells you electricity is the future.
The Nissan Sunderland plant is a titan of the auto industry in the northeast. But with crucial carbon targets needed to be reached, industry has to play a huge role in making big business sustainable. Nissan are calling their response to this EV360. And luckily for us, plant manager Alan Johnson was on hand to tell us more. Get ready for some robots. So earlier this year there was a big announcement of 360. Talk to us about that. What does that mean?
EV360 is an EV hub. There's 3 parts to it that are all interrelated. First of all, you've got a new electric vehicle to be produced in the Sunderland plant. Secondly, you've got microgrid energy distribution system, 100% renewable energy. So that also will save us collectively, will save 55,000 tonnes of CO2 per year. The third part is our battery supplier have announced plans to construct a second gigafactory in IAMP, and they'll be able to take advantage of the microgrid project as well as us. So what we want to do is take as little as we can from the grid and use as much of our own energy generated by ourselves, obviously clean, but not from the grid, so that the energy in the grid can be used by other customers. Each of these in isolation is significant, but when you package them together in one joined up plan, it really is something special.
So that leads me on to another question. So one of the discussion topics that often comes up when talking about electric vehicles is the end of life or second life of things like batteries. Can you give us an example of how Nissan are approaching that?
We've got a project running now, and what we're doing is we're using Leaf second life batteries to store the energy that we're generating. So it's a very nice, clean, clever package. You're ticking a lot of boxes, you know, you're reusing batteries, which is great of course, but you're optimising and maximising the renewable energy that we generate ourselves and minimising the amount that comes from the grid. So it's a really cool project.
What do you think the future of road cars and the automotive industry looks like?
I think you can see it already. There's clearly a migration towards EVs, and it's very exciting. It's probably the biggest transition that the automotive industry will have seen in 100 years, and we're part of it.
So that was easily one of the coolest things I've ever done. So interesting to see how that all works. And particularly interesting to see how seamless the production line is working with combustion and electric vehicles and how they can make one after the other with no problem. So I guess for argument's sake, you could say, if for whatever reason, maybe what comes out of COP, there's an even bigger push to go electric sooner, quicker, faster, these guys are in a pretty good position to do that. Everything's already going, their future plans are already in full swing. And something else I noticed coming here is seeing the wind turbines, seeing the solar panels, it made me think that that's how big industry should be. It should be about being sustainable. It should be about creating your own energy mix and not draining from the grid or needing to use fossil fuels. And these guys are already doing a pretty good job of that, and even more so in the future. Welcome back to the EV Road Trip, day 4, and you're joining us in Northumberland, which is the border county between England and Scotland. So we're getting pretty close to our endpoint of Glasgow now, but we're not going directly there. We're going to go cross country a little bit and stop off at 2 more projects before we get to COP. The first of which being a Wildlife Trust ran project where hopefully we'll learn a little bit more about the importance of protecting our environment and biodiversity and reforestation. Benshaw Moor, high in the hills of Northumberland, is a project run by the Northumberland Wildlife Trust. A 600-acre plot of land purchased in 2019 and turned into a nature reserve. Environmental protection and conservation projects like this will be part of the discussion at COP26 because of the vital role they play in protecting us against climate change. So time for a walk in the countryside with Director of Conservation Duncan Hutt to explain why rewilding projects like this are so important. So Duncan, tell us where we are. What are we looking at?
We're on Benshaw Moor, which is a nature reserve of Northumberland Wildlife Trust, and we're looking at an area of upland, and it's an area that hasn't been grazed now for just over 2 years, and it's certainly looking a little bit different in terms of its lushness and its volume, I suppose, than we had 2 years ago.
So one of the key pillars of COP26 this year is about kind of protecting the environment, helping ecosystems and biodiversity. Why are projects like this important for the environment?
There's different strands to this, I think. You know, there's biodiversity itself. So, you know, allowing a site to be more natural and more and operate more naturally is great for wildlife. Another strand of how this site benefits things is carbon storage. You know, we've got peatland on here. A lot of this land is covered in peat, and peat is a fantastic store of carbon, perhaps more so than woodland actually. And I think the third strand is about water. You know, the shorter the vegetation, the faster the water flows off. So the water flows into the streams and rivers, gets down into the bigger rivers, flows downstream, and then causes flooding. When the vegetation's long, that raindrop falling out of the sky really struggles to, you know, it's going to take ages to get from the point it lands on the ground or in the middle of vegetation and seep its way through to the stream. So you moderate the flows, you slow them down, you make them not peak as high as they would be otherwise. So, you know, longer vegetation in the uplands will actually have a huge knock-on effect to flooding problems we have further down in the lowlands. So, you know, that's a great society benefit too. We spend loads of money on flood defences, but actually, you know, we've spent virtually nothing on here to make a flood defence in its own right by letting nature do it for us. Well, we're down at the waterfall, small waterfall on the site, and you know, this is sort of mid-flow, I suppose. You know, it can get a lot more than this, and it can get really quite low in summertime as well. What we hope to achieve by all the work we're doing on the site is actually to moderate that so it's all the year. It's a bit more flow in summer, when it's dry, but also we want to stop those big sort of really powerful flows that come down in winter.
I find that really interesting how you've got the ability, by protecting the land around, to increase flow when it needs it in the summer and then reduce flow when you don't need it in the winter.
It's amazing what nature can do if we let it. You know, we talk about, you know, insects. We need insects to pollinate our crops, yeah, and yet we spend a lot of our time trying to kill them with pesticides, and that's ludicrous. But you know, places like this can provide that oasis for survival of some of those species, which then spill out to do all those things for us as a society outside it.
With the Northumberland Hills in the rearview mirror, it was on to the final leg of the journey, with one more place to visit before reaching Glasgow. Renewable energy is a major part of the climate conversation, if not the most important part. It's also of huge interest to Formula E, who strive to power all race events and car charging with as much clean and renewable energy as physically possible. So with 20 miles left of the journey, I decided to take a small detour and check out the most incredible example of renewable energy I've ever laid eyes on: Whiteley Wind Farm. Welcome to Whiteley Wind Farm, the largest onshore wind farm in the UK. The site covers 83 square kilometres, which, if you picked it up, put it in the sky, moved it over Glasgow, that would cover the entire city centre. When Whiteley opened in 2009, the 10 years that followed, the renewable energy generated here was almost 5% of all of the renewable energy generated in Scotland. That's a saving of over 5 million tonnes of carbon emissions, based on what the equivalent of burning fossil fuels would be. So this is one of the larger turbines on the site, 93 metres diameter. And you can see the turbines go around. It doesn't look like it, but these turbines are going around rotating at 180 miles per hour at the tip of them. And what's particularly impressive is just one rotation creates enough energy to power 300 mobile phones. Renewable energy is such an important part of the conversation about climate change, and centres like this at Whiteley are incredibly important in that switch. But from what I've heard, there's much more going on here than just renewable energy generation. What we're walking on now is part of 130 kilometres of tracks that are used all year round for things like cycling, hiking, horse riding. I think even in the winter when it snows, they do dog sledding on here. It's kind of a perfect example of how it doesn't just have to be about the turbines. Essentially, this is a country park that gets more than 200,000 visitors a year. It really is an example of how sites like this should look. In 2019, this site generated enough clean energy to power every single electric car on the road in the UK. Now, bring it up to date, September this year, 2021, the energy generated here was only enough to power the electric cars bought in that month. That shows the uptake of electric cars in the UK, how quickly it's grown over the years and how much clean energy is needed to power them. And that is essential. The energy powering those cars must be clean, and it shows just how important sites like Whiteley are. It's been amazing to get up close and personal with these turbines at Whiteley. Places like this I find particularly inspiring, and they make me feel really confident about the future. And what I think is so special about this location is that it's not just a wind farm, there's a visitor centre. You know, it's encouraging people to come and learn. There's education programs going on. There's a bus tour that takes you around the wind turbines. It's the only place in the country that has that, but it's a really interesting look at how you can make sites like this not just about generating energy and kind of the business side, it's about immersing people in the change to technology, getting them understanding it, and I love that. There's no question that a big switch to renewable energy is exactly what we have to do, and sites like this are incredibly important in that switch. But I guess one of the main counter-arguments that comes with renewable energy is the idea of being able to manage the supply and the demand of electricity with the grid. What do you do when the wind doesn't blow, or what do you do when the sun doesn't shine? And batteries are increasingly important in that, the storage of that energy when it's surplus, ready for when it's needed in demand. And what they're doing here, they're in the final stages of generating a 50 megawatt battery system, which, to give you an idea of how big that is, it's about the size, roughly the size of half a football pitch. And what that will do will allow this centre to balance the energy use, to keep it and store it when the wind doesn't blow, and distribute it evenly so it completely can manage that grid and keep it completely balanced. With the last visit complete, there's only one thing left to do. Get on the road, get to Glasgow and COP26 and complete our journey. So we've made it to Glasgow to COP26, our EV road trip is complete. On the way we've had the chance to see some pretty amazing things. The future of electric mobility and electric cars, the future of renewable energy, and also how crucial it is to be protecting our environment and what that can offer to us. Now, behind me in these buildings is where the work begins. Hopefully what happens at COP26 will pave the way to a cleaner, brighter future. And I tell you one thing, Formula E are very proud to be a part of it.